You're listening to TDH Voice, an addiction and recovery podcast brought to you by the Discovery House. Join us for news, expert tips, and fresh perspectives on all things addiction and recovery.
Welcome to episode 2 of TDH Voice, a podcast all about addiction and recovery brought to you by the Discovery House. I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Deb.
And we are honored to host this show for you guys.
If this is your first episode, or if you've been an avid listener since day one, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you find a sense of inspiration and hope.
A question we get a lot is, how can I help my son, daughter, friend, husband, wife, coworker, etc.? How can I help them overcome their addiction? How can I be most helpful? And what we always turn to is knowledge. Knowledge is power, and having the most factual information possible is key.
Even before 2016, before fake news and that whole narrative, there's always been fake information circling about any topic. It's nothing new. And like most other industries, the addiction treatment industry is constantly battling for our truths. You know, we still can't get everyone to agree on basic facts like how addiction is not a choice or a moral failing.
National Drug and Alcohol Facts Week is a national health observance which links teens to science-based facts and information about addiction to shatter the myths about drugs and alcohol. So we figured it would be a perfect time for us to talk about some of the major myths of addiction and how even though they are just myths, not having the facts straight can be incredibly dangerous when we're talking about helping people who are addicted.
So here we go. The top 10 most harmful myths about drug and alcohol addiction. Myth number 1. Addiction is not a disease.
Shake my head, seriously. This is probably one of the most frustrating because addiction has been studied quite extensively in this regard and has been considered a brain disease by most of the mental health community for some time now. Specifically, the American Society of Addiction Medicine has released a definition of addiction highlighting that addiction is a chronic brain disorder and not simply a behavioral problem involving too much alcohol, drugs, gambling, or sex.
Myth number 2. You must hit rock bottom before seeking help for your addiction.
While many people do hit bottom before seeking help, it's not a requirement for recovery. A lot of people will also cite, having this great moment of clarity when they decided to get sober or clean. Again, this is not necessarily the rule.
Myth number 3. People who are addicted to drugs want to overdose. They do it for attention.
Oh my God. I was waiting in line for my coffee the other day, and I overheard this woman telling a group of people about fentanyl, its potency, and how many people will seek it out knowing that they could potentially overdose from it. But they do it anyway because the high is so intense. Naturally, my ears perked up, and I was totally eavesdropping. One of the people asked a fair question, but why would they do that knowing that they will overdose, knowing that they could die? She then went on to say that they just wanted attention. So they overdose on purpose. And that just made my blood boil. It couldn't be further from the truth.
Myth number 4. You don't need treatment. AA is free.
Yes, AA is free, and it's helped hundreds of thousands of people reach recovery over the years. So many people are able to get sober and stay sober with the help of AA, which is amazing. But for many others, this is merely the tip of the iceberg when it comes to recovery. From medication to one-on-one therapy, to residential treatment and intensive outpatient programs, there are many options to help you in every step of your recovery. It's important to know your resources and where and how to reach out. Everyone experiences recovery in different ways and has different needs.
Myth number 5. If your loved one was an addict, you'd know about it.
Though we'd like to think that we know our loved ones well enough to know that they were having a problem, the truth is that addicts are very good at hiding their addiction and masquerading their functioning despite their addiction.
Myth number 6. Addiction only happens to bad people.
This is 100% false. Addiction can happen to anyone, and it does, regardless of gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, etc. Being an addict does not make someone inherently bad. Consider the myriad of high-profile celebrities who have sought treatment for their addictions and are now living a happy life of sobriety.
Myth number 7. Being sober is so boring.
Not. There are so many ways to enjoy life in recovery. Going on outings, catching up with old friends, and having adventures become all the more fun when you're clean and serene. Also, shameless plug here, but the next episode of TDH Voice is going to be all about fun stuff to do in recovery. just in time for Valentine's Day, so stay tuned for that.
I'm excited about that one.
Me too.
Yeah, lots of great sober date ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Myth number 8. The only way it works is if the person wants to get clean and sober.
This one I can see because there's always that dialogue about having to hit rock bottom, like we talked about earlier, or having that quintessential moment of clarity that changed everything. But that just isn't necessarily the way for every person. Plenty of people are in recovery today because they were forced to start rehab as a result of a DUI or trouble with the law. Not everyone is 100% sure they're ready for recovery once they decide it's time to go. Even those who are already working a program, whether that's AA or through a treatment center, have thoughts like, is this really what I want? Or is this really how I want to live? Even when you've been sober or clean for years, you might still have those moments of, is this the right thing? But you've just got to keep going or keep coming back, as they say.
Oh, which brings us to myth number 9, as you mentioned, the keep coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So myth number 9, the 12 steps are archaic and don't work for the modern day person in recovery.
Different strokes for different folks, as the saying goes. As with everything in life, you might find that what works for someone else doesn't work for you, and vice versa. Though the steps were first published in 1939 and therefore might be viewed as archaic, there is something to be said for the fact that nearly 80 years later, the steps are still being utilized by addiction recovery groups worldwide.
Myth number 10, I'm too old for treatment or recovery.
This honestly could not be further from the truth. In fact, we had a woman share with us recently about her treatment experience. She said, quote, I was 46 when I started rehab, and a month and a half later celebrated my 47th birthday at their sober living house. I'll be the big 50 this fall. I didn't mind that a big majority of the residents were young enough to be my children. We were all there with the same goal and objective, to get to the root of our issues and learn how to live a clean and sober life. I made friends that are like family today. The truth is that there really isn't a good or bad time to start your road to recovery. The key is just to get started.
And as they say, every journey starts with the first step. Perhaps the best time to get started with something is yesterday, but the second best time is today.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And that's it. There are tons more myths about addiction and recovery, far too many to fit them all in one episode. But we want to hear from you. What are the most ridiculous or harmful myths that you've heard about addiction and recovery? Tweet us at TDHRehab with the hashtag TDHVoice and let us know.
Tune in on February 7th, where we'll be talking all about dating and recovery. For now, I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Deb.
Thank you for listening to another episode of TDH Voice.
Are you struggling with how to help your loved one without enabling them? Get access to our resource library by visiting www.thediscoveryhouse.com for a free guide on how to help your loved one recover, or call for immediate help at 877-203-8186.